Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very glad you could be here. I'm going to lead off with just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, my name is Tim Woganot. I'm the Executive Director of the Yampa Valley Community Foundation. For those of you who I haven't yet met, I'm looking forward to meeting you at some point in person. I started this role at the end of April last year, so coming up on my first year. Some housekeeping stuff. We are recording this, so just be forewarned. And one thing I learned recently around recording of Zoom calls is that if you privately chat during the Zoom call, the people recording the call can see it afterwards when they review the recording. So just keep that in mind when you're privately chatting to one another. Tracy Hyatt is our donor engagement manager, and she is handling our Zoom call today. You will all be muted. After the panel discussion, we're going to open it up for questions from you, but because there are so many people participating, we're going to ask you to put your question into the chat box. So if you're not familiar with that, you use your mouse to see the bottom part of your screen, and there's a chat function, and it opens up a little window where you can type in your question. If you'd really like to ask a question in person, note that in the chat box, and then we can call on you and unmute you for that purpose. So I want to start by introducing the staff of the Yampa Valley Community Foundation. Tracy Hyatt, as I mentioned, is our donor engagement manager. We also have on the call Helen Bell, who is our community impact manager and works very closely with all the nonprofit organizations. I believe we have Holly Wilson, who runs our Yampa Valley Gives program and also keeps our office running. I don't know, I've had a hard time keeping up with everyone who's on the call, but if Jenny Campbell's on the call, she is our scholarship director, and Karen O'Connor is our finance director. And I'm not sure if those guys are on yet or not. I'd also like to quickly introduce the board members that I know are on the call. Again, Tracy, you may have to help me because I'm not sure I caught everybody who's on. But Craig Wasserman, Paula Cooper Black, Gordon Hattersley, Kelly Landers, Rob Race, Pam Williams, Shine Atha, Jim Bronner are the ones I've seen so far. We have a number of previous board members on the call as well. Tracy, who did I miss?
Tara Weaver.
Oh, great. Tara?
Yeah.
I also want to mention that my predecessor, Mark Anderson, is on the call. So thank you for being here, Mark. It's great to have you as well. All right, what we'll do is we'll start with a brief overview and then introduce our nonprofit leaders. Before we launch into the panel discussion, we wanted to explore your own knowledge on this issue of youth opportunities and challenges to youth opportunities. With a quick survey, and Helen's going to manage this, and she'll pop in now and again to offer other survey questions, and we'll kind of test your own knowledge. Then we'll be turning to the panel. We'll ask them to respond to a few questions, and then open up for questions from you. And again, we'll use that chat function. We plan to wrap up the panel at about 1:10, and we'll briefly hear about an exciting initiative that's underway now that relates to this broad challenge of ensuring a successful future for our Yampa Valley youth. At 1:15, we'll let our speakers get on with their days, and we'll hold a follow-up discussion with all of you, our invited guests. We'd like to hear from you about what you thought about the presentation, what you were surprised to learn, and hear any other lingering questions you may have. Then we'll also tell you a little bit about this year's community grants round, and we'll close by talking about how you can help at this time. But we promise to get you on your way no later than 1:30. Thanks again for joining. So let me take just a few minutes to just tell you a little bit about the Yampa Valley Community Foundation. We are a nonprofit foundation dedicated to improving the lives of Northwest Colorado residents through the power of philanthropy. Translated literally, philanthropy in Greek means love of humanity. And what Yampa Valley residents love about living here is both the people here and this place. Residents enjoy a strong sense of community that promotes neighborliness, is welcoming to newcomers, and makes this a great place to raise kids. We also love the combination of small town intimacy, extraordinary natural beauty, and ready access to the Yampa River, public lands, and the outdoor recreation opportunities of all kinds. So I think as a people, we feel rooted in the land and the landscape, and a strong part of our local identity is the preservation of agricultural heritage as essential to the character of this region. These themes of people and place guide our work at the Yampa Valley Community Foundation and how we measure our impact. The foundation is uniquely positioned at the intersection of our local communities, concerned donors, and civic leaders. In this role, we are able to mobilize a wide range of resources and put different tools to use in affecting change. We do this in 4 ways: donor engagement, strengthening nonprofits, making impactful grants, and building community. And I'll briefly describe each of these areas. First, we engage donors in meaningful philanthropy. We assist individuals, families, businesses to create personalized and meaningful impact through their philanthropy in the Yampa Valley, with a goal of building an engaged culture of giving. These community conversations that we're holding today and we'll be holding for the rest of the year are one of several ways in which we connect our donors to the causes they care about. Another service we offer to philanthropists is managing and investing charitable funds on their behalf. We manage about $29 million in over 200 donor advised funds, scholarship funds, agency endowments, and other funds, which help fuel the charitable investments we and our fund holders make in the region. Ultimately, our work with philanthropists seeks to increase the number of active charitable donors in our region and grow the pie of their total giving. Last year, we grew the pool of philanthropists by about 400 people, a 57% increase over 2019. Second, we strengthen and sustain local nonprofits. We serve as the trusted and frequently sought resource for local nonprofit organizations, advocating for and providing training opportunities to increase their effectiveness, become fiscally sustainable, and deliver greater impact in the Yampa Valley. Third, we deliver impactful grant making. We develop, encourage, and facilitate community grant making in arts and culture, health and human services, education, environment, and recreation through our community grants round, through giving circles, granting funds, and scholarship funds. Last year, we awarded $2.5 million to over 200 nonprofits, an increase of 66% over the previous year. Fourth and lastly, we build community. By engaging with local governments, businesses, and nonprofit organizations across the region, we listen to community concerns, build relationships, and earn trust. Our outreach and engagement positions the foundation to catalyze innovative and collaborative solutions to our community's most important unmet needs. So that's what we do. I'd like to pass the microphone over to Tracy Hyatt, who will describe how this program came about. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. We're glad to have you here. And I wanted to just take a couple minutes and let you know how this event came to be. Through many conversations with donors and people who hold funds with us and community members, we've heard that there is an appetite for more dialogue about issues facing our communities, as well as an opportunity to learn about organizations working to address those issues. So when thinking about philanthropy, people tend to focus on 1 or 2 areas of interest and are familiar with a handful of nonprofits that serve in that area. However, there's a much broader landscape and bigger picture. The nonprofits that serve our community across all the different sectors are like threads that are interwoven and interconnected, all working toward a common goal of creating a healthy and vibrant Yampa Valley. This Community Connection series was created as an opportunity for you to hear directly from the nonprofit and community leaders who are doing this important work, to educate you about the many organizations operating in the Valley and for you to learn about opportunities to get involved, have an impact, and become more connected to this community. We hope you find it informative and inspiring. And with that, I'm going to toss it back to Tim.
Thank you, Tracy. So let's introduce our panelists. We've got a really great group of leaders here with us today. And I'll just do a little introduction of each one. So we'll start with Dana Duran. Dana was raised in Fruita, Colorado, and has carried a passion for community service her entire life. She studied biology and mathematics as an undergrad at Regis University, and then received her master's of nonprofit management there as well. When asked why she chose to move to Moffat County, she said, "We wanted a community that felt like home and could help us raise a family. Moffat County provides a wonderful quality of life for us where we can see the stars, raise our children, and explore the outdoors." Dana has run the Boys and Girls Club of Northwest Colorado since 2007, serving half of the elementary and middle school kids in Craig and Steamboat. That is a remarkable statistic. It's probably grown, Dana, I don't know. It's probably more than half. But ask anyone who knows Dana and you will get the same answer. She is an amazing leader, and it is an honor for us to have her here with us today. Thank you, Dana. Secondly, in preparing for this panel, I got lucky in Gretchen's case to find a quote from her friend and fellow panelist, Michelle Pedix. In nominating Gretchen for the prestigious 2020 Hazy Werner Award, Michelle said that Gretchen represents that pioneer spirit because when she moved here, she saw a need, she rolled up her sleeves and said, how can we get this done? Gretchen Vandekar moved to Steamboat in 1990, not long after earning a master's degree in environmental engineering from the University of New Hampshire. In 1993, she encouraged the city to create Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, a program dedicated to engaging young people in the outdoors and inspiring them to use their strengths and potential to lead healthy, productive lives. But Gretchen is not just another incredible leader in the Yampa Valley, she's also a drummer in a local rock and roll band, El Kabong, which is named after the cartoon Quick Draw McGraw's alter ego. For those of you who remember Quick Draw McGraw, I happen to remember that cartoon. Anyway, personally, now that we're seeing the light at the end of the COVID tunnel, I cannot wait to go to one of El Kabong's shows. So I hope you guys are practicing. Like Gretchen, Michelle Pedix has also been a catalytic leader in the Yampa Valley since the 1990s, and her work with local youth services spans more than 2 decades and demonstrates her lifelong passion. In 1996, she helped form Partners locally and then served on its board until 2001. After working for the district attorney's office as the juvenile diversion coordinator and holding leadership positions with the City of Steamboat's teen programs and with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, she returned in 2012 to lead Partners as its executive director. Michelle grew up in Reading, Mass, but moved out here at a young age, met her husband, and is raising 2 nearly grown-up daughters, Kelly and Corey. Michelle is both a snowboarder and an avid gardener. Finally, Amber DeLay, having been raised, so Amber's our native here in Route Valley, in the Yampa Valley. She was raised both in Routt and Moffat counties. Amber brings her unique local perspective and understanding of the region's communities and their challenges to her work with Grand Futures. Amber spent her childhood in Hayden before moving to Craig, where she graduated from high school. She earned a bachelor's degree in English from Metro State University in Denver and a master's degree in grant writing from Concordia University, Chicago. Prior to stepping into the executive director role at Grand Futures, Amber worked for Josephine County Public Health in Southern Oregon, a program manager for Routt County United Way, and as a grant writer for Routt County. In her spare time, Amber enjoys the outdoors with her 2 dogs, and this summer she is earning her motorcycle license. So let's all remember to watch out for motorcycles on the roads soon. Okay, so with that introduction, we're gonna ask Helen to put up a little survey just to see what you all know or think you know that relates to this topic.
Great, thanks, Sim. The first question, there'll be 4 during this presentation. The first one is, how many kids in Routt and Moffat County receive free or reduced lunch? So on your screen, you can just press one of those little tabs. I'll give everyone about 15, 20 seconds to guess.
The results are tabulating.
Looks like still a couple trickling in. People are thinking hard about this. I think everyone has voted. End polling, and I'll share the results. Wow, we have a smart bunch. The correct result was the 4th answer, 1,623. This represents 46% of kids in Moffat County, 14% of kids in the Steamboat Springs School District, 37% of kids in South Routt School District, and 29% of kids in the Hayden School District. So we're off to a good start with the knowledge of the group.
That's great. Okay. So we tend to think about poverty as the only risk factor that affects our local youth, but we want to start by asking these professionals to reflect a bit on the factors that lead to risky behavior. And so we'll start, Amber, with you, just to walk through a little bit of ground setting, ground truthing and language development, so we all have a shared language. So if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about these factors and what you mean when you talk about factors.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tim. I'm really honored to be here and to get to set the stage for some language and ideas that will come up in the questions that the four of us will answer. And awesome. So what contributes to youth success? There are multiple different elements in a young person's life that affect their resiliency, as Tim said, and we are all working together to create the most ideal environment for young people to grow up in and to set them up for success. So there are multiple different ways that we can do that. So all of those different factors in their life, we call them risk and protective factors. That's our prevention science and our evidence-based term. We don't label any of our youth at risk in our world because internalizing that kind of label can perpetuate negative self-beliefs and negative behaviors. So instead, we look at these risk and protective factors that can predict behavioral and health outcomes for young people later in their life. And if we go to the next slide, the risk and protective factors happen across all domains. We look at those as community, family, school, and peer and individual. So what is happening in each of these domains affects how a young person responds to challenges in the other domains. For instance, when young people have support on an individual level with a parent, a mentor, a friend, they are more apt to engage positively in things that are happening on a community level, and vice versa. So then we'll look at what exactly is a risk factor and what is a protective factor. The kind of scientific definition that we have is that a risk factors are elements in a young person's environment that increase the likelihood of them engaging in health compromising behaviors. So all young people experience various risk factors and multiple risk factors in some cases. Some examples of those are favorable attitudes towards problem behaviors. So thinking that there's nothing wrong with violence or nothing wrong with substance abuse is a favorable attitude. And laws and norms favorable to substance use is another example. So how our community views certain problematic behaviors. And then on the other side of that, we have the protective factors, which are buffers against risk in otherwise adverse circumstances by either reducing the impact of a risk or changing the way a young person responds to it. So protective factors counteract risk factors. The more we can elevate protective factors, the more we can diminish the impact of risk factors. And the examples that I've put here are really important ones for us. Opportunities for pro-social involvement is important because it happens across all four domains. All of our work intersects with pro-social involvement, but it can be a sports club, having a positive group of friends, having a church community, pro-social involvement, and recognition for pro-social involvement. So being rewarded for engaging in their community, their peer groups, their family, and their schools in a positive way. So looking at those four domains, all community members have a role in helping youth succeed.
Okay. Thank you, Amber. Well, so let's start with, let's explore just a little bit about how each of your organizations approaches the challenges of ensuring a successful future for our youth. So I know you all do it in different ways. And Gretchen, what do you see as the biggest barriers to youth success?
Yeah, thanks. And thank you, Amber. You did such a great job with that. I'm on Amber's board, so I'm super proud of her. She knows so much more than I ever could. So, as Amber talked about, risk factors are clearly the biggest barrier to success for our youth. and our youth, success in education and employment and relationships, and ultimately the ability to become a successful adult, right? And particularly in rural communities like ours, like Routt and Moffat counties, there's a lack of those protective factors, right, that Amber talked about. So there are higher rates of substance use and abuse in resort communities and in non-resort rural communities as well, as the statistics will show us. And then even though we have a lot of youth serving organizations providing a lot of great services, a lot of times it's really hard for youth from those more rural outlying communities like, Hayden and South Routt and Clark and Dinosaur and, some of these more rural communities. It's hard for those kids to access those activities. So one of the strengths that all of us youth serving organizations in Routt County in particular bring to the table is our strong collaboration. I've worked a lot with statewide funders and through Rural Philanthropy Days, and I've traveled around the state to other rural communities. And one thing that is unique about our community is that we have such non-territorial services. We all work together. We feel that when one of us is strengthened, we're all strengthened. And, so we are all working together to increase access to youth in all regions of our counties. I know Boys and Girls Club and Grand Futures has active programs in Moffat County. Rocky Mountain Youth Corps is working this summer, thanks to a grant from the Community Foundation, to provide more opportunities for Moffat County youth to engage in our program. And I know Partners has been working for a number of years and trying to provide a mentoring program there. One thing that helps us be able to do that is our collaborations. We have the Routt County Youth Services Coalition. We have the Communities That Care, which Grand Futures oversees our Routt County arm of that. And I know the two counties have our Communities That Care work together a lot. We have the youth services sector of our Human Resource Coalition. So, there's a lot of great momentum for us to continue to provide those protective factors and break down those risk factors that our kids are feeling, and particularly in the face of the pandemic, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit. All of us youth serving organizations are putting our heads together to try to predict what added risk factors and what lack of protective factors our kids are feeling right now and will feel for months and years to come. And we are all together working hard to get ahead of the game so that we can provide a safe place for these kids to kind of come out of this isolation in a positive manner.
So let me turn to you, Michelle. What would you say are the biggest barriers that you're seeing to youth success in the region?
So I will tweak a little bit of the language on, we don't want kids to self-identify as being at-risk youth. However, I also don't want to water down that we have youth who are disadvantaged. So I guess the way we word it, my organization is strength-based. So while we recognize that, and I like analogies, I think we can all relate to either hiking, biking, or skiing. And the more great equipment you have is fabulous. But we were saying all kids face, right? So you could have the best equipment in the world, but if you don't have the skills to ski, you're still going to tumble and fall. But if you don't have the skills to ski and you have really bad equipment and it's snowing sideways and there's something else, so a snowboarder tries to take you out, you guys heard I was a snowboarder, so I threw myself there, then it's all that much more difficult, right? So for me, the biggest barriers is really that what Gretchen was talking about, the opportunity to learn the skills. And I'm always focusing across all our organization is that trusted adult. So for the kids who are most at risk because of all those things I just mentioned, because of all the things Gretchen and Amber mentioned, the key, I believe, is that when there's not a trusted, caring adult, whether it's in the school, the family, those domains that Amber was talking about, there's opportunities for trusted adults to come across any of those domains. When there's that, a lot of the other things can come in place. They can teach the skills. They can give them the safe opportunity to practice the skills, right? Again, using that analogy of skiing. And, you know, then you meet more skiers, you have social capital that happens from it. So for me, I see the biggest barrier for Routt County kids is when that piece is missing. They're facing all those difficulties and they don't have someone in their backyard. So it's so important for all these opportunities for adults to cross over in the kid's life to bring that to the table, to bring the caring to the table. So that's what I see as the difference between the kid who makes it, so to speak, right, and the kid that doesn't. It's who is in their life. I often use ESPN as the, you know, if anyone's a sports fan, watches ESPN, they constantly talk to the ones who made it big. And to me, a success story is a kid who might have graduated high school and just is happy, is just living their life, right? Like, you don't have to be the superstar, but chances are they're going to mention there was somebody in their life who believed in them.
Yeah. So Dana, you are in, as Michelle said, you are right in the backyard of some of the more challenging places in Moffat County. How do you ensure success, and what do you see as the challenges in your work?
You know, I've always really thought kids are kids, right? I love to play jump rope. I think, you know, we've been playing jump rope as long as kids could pick up a rope and twirl it, or playing basketball or different sports. I still think that kids at a fundamental level like those same things that we've all liked, you know, our whole entire lives. But if you think about the world that we live in today, marijuana is legal, opioids are readily accessible, and technology has changed the world in the way we interact with it. Those are a lot of changes that our kids are kind of coming through with us at the same time, without adults knowing how to teach them through these different pieces. So I think this rapidly changing world is the biggest challenge for parents and then also for our kids. When you think about how kids grew up a while ago, how I grew up, I guess, is that a long time ago? My grandma was around when my mom wasn't able to be there, or my dad was around, right? Now we have two working families, or two parent families that are both working. And sometimes they're working multiple jobs to make it in Steamboat Springs. So that family circle, that dynamic has changed. And I agree with my colleagues about really providing kids with a safe place to land. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to have challenges, but we've got to be able to make it through those challenges along the way.
Okay, thank you, Dana. So let's turn to, so one of the biggest challenges I know you all have faced has been this last year with COVID.
Yeah.
Helen, you have a survey that you want to test some knowledge around?
Absolutely. The next question is, what percentage of students considered themselves to have poor mental health at least some of the time since the start of COVID? When I present the answer, this comes from a survey that was conducted in Hayden only, but definitely translate across all the school districts. A couple answers are still trickling in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end polling. And once again, the group is right. The answer is 56% of kids per the Healthy Kids Colorado survey in the Hayden School District reported that they had poor mental health days at some point during the last school year. That's a very high number.
So I'll ask each of you to respond to this question. So, COVID has obviously created a whole new level of stress on the support systems. I think you were getting at that, Dana. We were already in this kind of new environment for parenting, but COVID kind of threw everything out the window. How did COVID impact your work, and what, as you look ahead, what is your what does your new normal look like going forward post-COVID? Let's start with you, Dana, and then we'll just go around the horn.
Well, my crystal ball's a little fuzzy. I don't know how you guys think about that new normal and what things look like in the future, but we at Boys and Girls Club have turned Boys and Girls Club on its head. Everything about 2020 was different. Everything was different about the service delivery, the way we interacted with kids, the pivoting that we had to do, putting kids into cohorts that stayed together. But the thing that wasn't different was the need to have a safe and positive place with caring adult role models where they could go and try new things and they could play and they could lift that weight of COVID off of their shoulders. At the clubs, we tried really hard to give them that opportunity, and for our staff as well. I think that's been one of the unforeseen, challenges has been the weight that it's put on our staff. We increased our hours by 250% in order to be open all day as the kids were on their hybrid days. So that's been quite a challenge with COVID. I'm hopeful as we move into the summer that we can offer services to more kids. As Tim said in the beginning, at Boys and Girls Clubs, we serve about half the kids in each of our 2 communities. That's a lot of kids. And during COVID, we had to cut it in about half in order to meet the requirements and social distancing and all of those pieces. So we're re-gearing up for summer, looking to add in programs and opportunities, looking at their resiliency and strengthening the opportunities that kids have in our communities.
Okay, great. Amber, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, thank you so much. So we know that before COVID, there was already a lack of mental health supports for young people, and not just services, not just official services, but like Michelle said, adults who are trained to deal with a young person's crisis, which could be anything on a normal day. Like my 13-year-old nephew told me yesterday he got made fun of all day at school because his voice cracked in the classroom. Like, that's a normal young person's problem that could weigh on him if he didn't have somebody to talk to. So it's there's already a lack of mental health supports. And then when we see our community change through COVID, youth are reporting using nicotine, cannabis, and alcohol more as a result of COVID. They're reporting higher levels of stress, not just with themselves, but with their family members. And being able to reach them was huge during COVID. So one big thing that changed for us was virtual service delivery. So our youth councils went online, which had a lot of benefits. We were able to bring in young people from South Route, and we were able to work with some students in Hayden to bring them together. And one of the things that we saw happening is that youth were also reporting about self-harm, suicidal thoughts, and suicide attempts. So like, they know that mental health, like, they're very aware that their mental health has been jeopardized as a result of this, and they started advocating for it. So we were able to bring them together and try and help them work on projects, start a buddy system, get some things in place where we could actually support their own mental health and help them figure out a way to do it. And then also do trainings with adults on youth mental health first aid and how to respond to a crisis, all of those things. And then I think the biggest thing that we saw was pro-social activities were canceled. So no sports, no after school programs. And so we really had to shift and find ways to develop community in a virtual setting. And so post-COVID, as we kind of move out of that, our big work is to keep engaging youth from rural communities, to keep educating more adults, and work together as a community to address some of these, because like Dana said, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the long-term effects are. So we really just have to keep working hard to prevent problems from coming up later.
Yeah, good point. Gretchen, how about you?
Yeah, that all resonates very strongly with me as a parent of a 15 and 17-year-old. I can tell you all those things are true. But with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps last summer, a lot of our sister corps in the state and the nation were, pushing back their start date and maybe not running at all. And we didn't feel like that was an option. We felt an obligation to, provide these kids with a place that they can get outside and continue in some sort of normalcy. So we were able to actually serve for over 450 youth and young adults, which is about 95% of our target. And we did implement very strict COVID protocols, as you can imagine, especially with kids that are camping on crew. And with all those served, because of the strict COVID protocols, we only had one case of COVID. And that was an intern who worked by themselves and didn't spread it to anyone else. We saw already this year, we have seen a surge in demand for programs like ours, and I'm sure everyone else has. We had 4 times the number of applicants a month ago than we did any other year in history, and we've been around for 28 years. So this year, we feel, I think we can all agree that our kids need to learn, they need to get back into a social setting. They need to increase their self-value. We feel like at RMYC, we feel like we need to get them out with each other, doing good work for the community to feel a sense of value. When you're on the internet like this all the time, your sense of value goes down, right? They feel disengaged. That's why they're using substances. So, we feel really strongly that we are not only going to provide, the same level of service that we did last year, but we're actually increasing capacity across the board. And there are a lot of silver linings that came out of COVID. We had a lot less gastrointestinal illnesses last year on crew, which was a blessing.
More hand washing.
Yes, a lot more hand washing and the masks. I think this year the kids will be more used to it. There are a lot of silver linings, but just like Amber alluded to, our direct lines, our direct service staff, our crew leaders, they really felt a lot of stress and anxiety. So we're bolstering our mental health resources for our staff. And I know you guys are doing the same, and we all are putting our heads together. What can we do for our staff people that are dealing with the anxiety and absorbing the anxiety from the participants? So that's kind of one of the things we're working on this year. So thanks.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Christian. I think that's a really good point. That caregivers challenge and all of you are in these caregiving roles where you're just experiencing so much stress, you're putting so much energy into your clients, and there's a real need to make sure your teams are taking care of themselves at the same time. Michelle, why don't you reflect on all of this too?
So you guys said a lot of the same things I would, so I won't repeat that, but kind of ditto to everything my colleagues said. For us, we were somewhat fortunate in that we are a one-to-one, right? So with group activities, we did a lot of bringing stuff to houses and dropping off like art projects and writing projects and a lot of resiliency building skills around mindfulness and stress reduction. But as soon as we could get the relationships connected virtually on safe platforms, we were able to pivot that way. Again, being part of a larger mentoring organization, statewide and national, we had those tools at our fingertips and best practices. So I think that's where some of the groundwork we had done in a crisis is when it all, kind of came together. We actually grew during that time. Not only the existing partnerships weren't, we didn't have any terminations because people understood like, this is not the time to end that mentoring relationship. This is when we need you the most. But we also, was surprising was we had more volunteers, whether it was because people weren't, leaving the community because they couldn't travel and they were willing to mentor, or they had more time on their hand, but people stepped up and we were able to do, the trainings and get them matched virtually. And I was really impressed. There's actually a lot of research coming out around that mentoring relationship that I was probably one of the scoffers a few years back. And now I understand that, a relationship's a relationship and this key components are there. The only other thing I would mention that was a little different for us is those first few weeks, that first month and a half, we really, because we work across so many of the sectors, we work very closely with schools, we work closely with DHS, we work closely with the families, we're in the families' homes, right? So we ended up kind of going out of our lane temporarily and doing like food security, you know, helping, how were they dealing with rent? How are they dealing with accessing unemployment, schoolwork, going into the homes and making sure they were set up with laptops. So we just, we found that we just went out of our lane for a little bit while all the agencies that do that kind of stuff like Lift Up. And I will just reiterate one more time that it really does take a village, and that is what is so amazing about Route County. So moving forward, those are the hybrid things we're going to continue to do. We're going to, any relationships we've strengthened, any ways that we've seen we can help, we're going to continue to do that, right? One more thing, sorry, I said the only thing. We're only talking about COVID, but I will say for our population, since about 52% of our youth are Spanish-speaking families, 92% are considered living in poverty. Some of the social injustice stuff has been a whole nother thing for our case management and programming. So COVID was, I would say at this point, it was actually at one point 50-50 for us in the kind of stress and kind of conversations and kind of trainings we needed to have around diversity and inclusion and political, and, you know, and our kids they know that's going on. So that was just another piece I think that's important that we continue to do the work on.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of nodding. Does anyone have anything else you want to add on this topic before we move on to the next? Okay. You will take yourself off mute if you want to, correct? Okay. All right. So Helen, let's shift gears, do another survey.
Gretchen mentioned that kids are turning to substances during this time. The next question is, what percentage of Route County high school students reported drinking in the past 30 days?
It's good that we're not asking adults this question.
No, exactly. Pretty mixed bag here. Keep everyone, looks like we're wrapping up. So actually this time the group overestimated the amount that reported drinking. The correct answer is 34%. I want to share a couple facts around this that are, to me, alarming. This 34% is 2.8% higher than the statewide average. At Steamboat Springs High School, this was up from 24.3% in 2015 to 37.6% in 2019. So this survey result came from Healthy Kids Colorado survey, and the numbers are from 2019, so they're pre-pandemic. I do want to mention that Route County is higher in a lot of these different substance abuse. One is they hire in saying it's safe to drive a car after drinking. Route County kids are higher in cigarette use, vaping use, and marijuana use.
I think they are higher in saying that it's safe to do those things. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, interesting. So we have a chat from Lisa Lorez who says that single thing you've said hit home with our special needs youth population and the kids involved with Yampa Valley autism. We also saw an uptick in summer programming, therapy needs, and virtual parenting group sessions. So I think what you're saying is true for a lot of the nonprofits in the health and human services sector for sure. Okay, earlier we talked a little bit about what you saw as the barriers to youth success. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about how your organization approaches this challenge, sort of your theory of change that your organization has for addressing these challenges. Amber, let's start with you this time, and again, we'll go around the circle.
Yeah, and I just want to make a note that it's actually really common for students too. They think that 90% of their peers are using substances when really it's 34, which helps contribute to them thinking that everyone's doing it. So doing those education and looking at data with youth is super important. That is part of our theory of change, is that we can't make a change and for us substance abuse among youth unless the youth are leading the change. We can't make decisions about how they're going to change their local culture, how they want to change the community unless we include their voices. And we work with youth councils just like Routt County Teen Council across the state. And we hear from youth when we ask them, do you have adults that you can go to with your problems? And they say yes. And we're like, do adults know how to handle it or know how to help you? And a lot of them are like, no, they don't. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't have the answer. And although there's a lot of training and education out there, part of our work with youth is to work with them as partners and come up with community solutions. So we educate them about issues that we're seeing in the community. We develop skills with them and we give them opportunities to make a difference. And when we applied this approach to Routt County Teen Council, it transformed the group. We have young people leading Teen Council and they've broken off into subgroups and they've developed top 5 priorities that they want to work on in the community, including mental health and equity and diversity. They know that these are issues that we're experiencing and they want to make a difference. And so our philosophy is really to elevate youth voices and let them participate and have a voice and make decisions about things that are impacting them in their community. And in doing that, supporting young people to become leaders, it has a ripple effect in their community. If a student sees another student taking on and making a difference on a community issue, then they see it, their peers tackling a big monster that they might want to then take on an issue that they really care about. So we elevate youth voices and we try and make community change in working with them.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Amber. Dana, how about you?
I want to tell you a little story about Izzy. Izzy is a member of our ATTIC, our Mary Brown Teen Center. She's been coming to the club since she was 6. I think she's 14 now. So that's a solid 8 years of a relationship with Izzy. Izzy wrote a story and was featured in our Youth of the Year celebration. So if anybody saw that, I'm sorry to be a little repetitive, but it just warms my heart and really talks about the work that we're doing at Boys and Girls Club. She talked about how she really struggled putting on fake personas, that she showed up how other people expected her to be. Then she found the Mary Brown Teen Center and our teen director, Megan, where she was quickly welcomed, and they have such a sense of belonging up there in the attic. Megan started a mug club where everybody gets their own mug, but then you earn stickers to go on your mug. I don't know if you have teenagers, but a sticker is a very important thing in their lives. So if we give them the mug and the stickers, you know, we're well on our way to being popular with the teenagers, I think. In the Mary Brown Teen Center, we were open every day from 8 to 6. So kids were coming on their off days. They were engaging in their homework, in their Zoom classes, making sure all of that was getting done. And that doesn't take all day. So then Megan was taking them out and they were going on field trips and engaging in the community in very safe ways, right? We kind of tiptoed to that and added pieces along the way. What I really love about what Izzy said when she did her speech was, we get out and do activities and the Teen Center shows us how to live healthy lives instead of just being told what to do. I think that's our theory of change, is instead of just talking to kids about what they need to do, we take that trusting relationship and then we go out and we show them how to live their healthiest life. Instead of doing drugs, instead of engaging in risky behavior, we're showing them how to live that most meaningful life. Izzy also said, it always matters to be kind. What a great quote for us all to live by, right? That it always, always, always matters to be kind.
Thanks, Dana. That's
Thanks,
great.
Tim.
Hey, Michelle, how about you?
So our theory of change is that we invest in youth until they invest in themselves, and not until as if we stop, but that's the goal. And we do that by spending, matching them with a caring, trained adult. Sometimes it's a peer, actually, through the peer mentoring. But when somebody starts investing in themselves and seeing their self-worth, they're going to make good decisions around education, around sports and healthy lifestyle, and seeking mental health. So what we see in the story I have is that recently we really trying to do kind of also, I'm going to tie in everybody's thing, but Amber's like, elevating youth voices. We don't hire staff anymore unless there is a youth involved in the whole hiring process. So there's a whole skill building around that, right? Like how to, like you train them on what does interviewing look like, reading the resumes. And in this last round with our Spanish speaking case manager, a youth who had been involved in our program for a long time, really found her voice during this interviewing process and really started talking about what it meant to be in partners, since she also was around 8 years old and she's a senior this year, and what the mentor has meant to her and the doors it's opened and how she's learned like her worth. And she actually even came out, which I thought was so awesome, that she said, I thought there was something wrong with me. Why am I in partners? Which we always struggle with, right? Like we don't want you to see yourself as an at-risk youth, but strength-based. But she's like, but I look now and I see like, yeah, I know why I was referred. I had some challenges in my life. But that's now like her pride, like her, and she knows that she's really resilient and she's got some skills that some of her peers don't have. So, and I will just say, like every single kid, we talk about this, every kid has a challenge, and that means on the flip side of that coin is every kid has a gift. Every kid has something special about them, and it's our job to help them see that, find that, develop it, and support it. So that's our theory of change.
Great. Okay, Gretchen.
Y'all are going to make me cry. I want to go back to something that I think Amber said, that, sometimes adults don't have all the answers. Well, guess what? Parents don't know anything. I've been working with kids for over 30 years. Everybody else's kids, I feel like I do a really good job with, but parents, we don't know anything. And they aren't going to listen to us no matter what we do. And that's why it's so critical to have programs like Boys and Girls Club and Partners. And both of my boys have taken advantage of those services and found trusting adults in other places than home. So I appreciate you guys greatly. And then, Dana, you were talking about, challenges and just, the challenges that these young people go through. And, and Tim, you asked us to talk about our theory of change. We went through a process a few years back at RMYC where we tried to figure out how to answer, what do you do, right? And we put kids on crews and blah, 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 blah. And what it really boils down to, what we do is we provide young people with the opportunity to overcome adversity in a safe and guided environment. So when they come to us, we put them on a crew with people that they don't like, that they're different than. And we make them live together and we make them work together and cook for each other and get along. And, I think the federal government could use a process like this. You're stuck together for like a couple of weeks and you have to learn how to talk to each other in a civil manner. So, I feel like that's what we do. And I wanted to share a story here too, about a couple stories. One is about a young woman or young girl. She's 16, 17 years old, Routt County girl who, she was experiencing bullying at school. She had a good group of friends, but then as they grew older, her friends were using substances and she didn't want to use substances. And, she was kind of pulling herself away from them and getting bullied and, had a lot of stress and anxiety from it. And she didn't feel like anyone understood. She came out to Rocky Mountain Youth Corps and she met all these different peers. And, in small towns, it feels like, how can I possibly get other friends? Those guys are the athletes. Those guys are the drama club. These guys are the smart people, and, and there's the druggies. Where do I go? Well, she actually found a couple of new friends on crew, and, and she was able to kind of break through that barrier of feeling like, I don't have any friends, and no one understands me. But what I wanted to point out was, when she came on crew, she didn't immediately like dive into, here's my problems, but the crew leaders are trained to have a very inclusive and open atmosphere there. And she actually, became very vulnerable and talked about what she was going through. And that's that challenge piece. That's that adversity piece, right? She was able to talk about it and have people surround her, saying, hey, you know what? I'm like that too. And so it was like this barrier that she broke through. So that was one story. And then another story was an email I got a couple of years ago from a kid. Well, he's not a kid. He's a young adult. And he did, I forget, I'm not young anymore, but I'm not old. It's all relative. So, when he was 18 years old, he was very lost. He said he was totally lost and out of his realm. He didn't know what he was going to do with his life. And he came and he did our 10-week program, 24/7, 10 weeks, no drugs or alcohol, just living out there, working hard. And, he found through hard work, he could hold his head up high, and, he felt like strong because he was able to get through this hard day of work and get along with these people that are different than him. And, he said he figured out what it meant to truly care about something you're doing, and most of all, to forgive and understand. And I think when you're thrown into a situation like crew, you have to forgive, and you have to forgive yourself, and you have to understand. He said after he left that first year with us, he went and he enrolled in the military. He served in Iraq. And then he came back at age 22. He came back from Iraq, again, completely lost, feeling like, I got all these issues in my head. I'm alone. And he decided to come to RMYC because that year we had our first veterans crew. So we had an all veterans crew that were, they learned how to use chainsaws and do, firefighting and fire fuels reduction. And it was very much like the military, right? You have your platoon, you have this dangerous thing in your hand, a chainsaw. But most importantly, he was with people that understood where he was coming from, and the re-entry into civilization, so to speak. I think wilderness is more civil than civilization. So I think we ought to change those terms. But yeah, and so he found such great benefit from that he now works for the VA. So these are just examples of putting these young people in a situation like a crew where they have these challenges they have to face and they have to overcome them. And we don't teach them anything. We just help guide them through and over and beyond the challenge. And when they come out on the other side, they have much more resilience, much more acceptance, much more self-value, and they can really do anything they want from here on out. So that's our theory of change.
That's great. And I think all of you are building empathy in these young people too, an understanding of how other people feel and compassion and those kinds of really important characteristics for leaders. That was great. Helen, let's go to the next survey question.
The last question is, how many youth serving organizations exist in the Yampa Valley? Oh, I need to launch the poll. Sorry.
There we go. We need a wait music.
I know, right? We'll give another couple seconds. I can see the answers coming in. All right. So you got this group is 3 for 4. And this is a hard answer in general, it's a moving target. The foundation, we went through all the organizations in the community and any organization that had youth serving in their mission. We estimate it's between 25 and 35 organizations. This doesn't include so for example, some of our arts organizations have youth programming. They're not included in this list. So really this number could be 25 or it could be 75 because of the programs that some of our organizations do that aren't necessarily youth focused organizations. So with that, we created this list of the organizations that are mission based to serve the youth, and they'll get emailed to everyone attending this presentation afterwards with a link to their website and a little bit about their mission. So you'll have that to learn more about these organizations.
Thank you, Helen.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we leave time for our audience to ask you guys questions. So in this next one, let's make it brief. What do you see as opportunities for community members, like the people on our call, to get involved and be part of a solution to these challenges we're facing youth? And Dana. We'll go Dana, Michelle, Gretchen, Amber.
I think that there are opportunities to just plug in. Half of life is showing up and being present in your circle of influence. And I think finding those opportunities to plug in at if I can do Boys and Girls Club, we're looking for board members, we're looking for volunteers. Your donations are invaluable. We cannot do our programs without your support. So find a young person, call your grandchild, donate to a youth serving organization, be present, I guess would be my plug.
Great, thank you, Dana. Michelle.
Exact same thing. If there's something that you want more training on, just know that we do free trainings all the time. I know Amber does the free mental health first aid training, things like that. So if you want to be more confident in being present, take a training. They're interesting.
Great suggestion. Amber. Or did I say Amber, Gretchen? I can't remember the order I yelled out. Go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, I think my number one on my list is listen to the youth in your life, in our community. They have a lot to say. If you don't feel, if you need more skills, then get trained in positive youth development or youth mental health first aid. And prevention and youth support is a lot bigger than us. It's a lot bigger than Grand Futures. We do community-wide substance use prevention projects, so you can get involved with those by volunteering, by donating, by staying informed. I love what Dana said about plugging in. There's so many ways to plug into the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Amber. Gretchen.
Okay, so we don't want you to volunteer out on the trail with our crews. I'm just going to tell you that right out. And you're probably all going, good. But they are out there isolated as a crew for a reason. Volunteer your time with partners and Boys and Girls Club and with Grand Futures and so many others. But one thing I would say is, and all of you people that are on this right now and that are going to listen to the recording later, you're already on the right path. You're trying to understand what the issues are, and you're trying to see who the people are behind working on those solutions. So we appreciate that. We appreciate the voice. We also appreciate your faith in us, the folks that have the training and experience as youth serving professionals. As parents, we're terrible, but as youth serving professionals, we're awesome. And yeah, and just to really understand, what we're doing. RMYC is going through a 5-year strategic plan right now. It's going to come out hopefully in a month or two. It takes time to read it. Some of you have been interviewed on it. And then I'm gonna also say something that might ruffle feathers, but if you know who Vu Le is, he writes a blog called Nonprofit AF, which doesn't stand for what you think it does. It's and friends. And he says, when you give money, if you're gonna support organizations, nonprofits financially, trust them to do what's right with the money. Don't ask us to spend it on this specific thing or that specific thing. Yeah. And just, have a little more faith in what we do, and let us spend our time using your investment on making our services better rather than trying to write the grant report or prove to you what we're doing. We do have a lot of proof of that in our stories and in our statistics. So I would just say, you know, volunteer if you can, and then invest your financials if you can, because we all need money. So thank you. Thanks a lot for listening.
Yeah. Good answers, everybody. Let's see what questions we have from the audience. So again, use your chat function. If you want to ask a question in person, just let us know. Tracy can highlight you and unmute you.
You can also use the reactions button at the bottom right of your screen to raise your hand, and then I can see that you're raising your hand.
By the way, Michelle is looking for board members. So if you want to work with a really awesome executive director as a board member, reach out to Michelle. I see one from Judy or Rich McGinnis. Can you confirm what is meant by youth? We should have said this at the very beginning. What do we mean by youth? Are we talking up to 18 years and then or beyond?
Usually we all kind of say up to 25, because with the brain development, we now know that the brain continues to develop. I mean, it continues to develop your whole life, but specifically the way the brain develops up to 25 is when the final formation is there.
I'm glad to hear that, Michelle, having a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old. I'm like,
and
oh
some take longer. And some take longer. Yeah.
In Boys and Girls Clubs, we're a little more traditional with the up to 18 for youth.
Yeah.
And us as well. I know Gretchen does
Gretchen serves those young adults.
We do too at Grand Futures, and that's how we define it as youth up to 18 and young adults 18 to 25.
Mm.
Yeah, we consider them all youth up to 25. So there's a lot of different, like the state will tell you one thing, and
right,
you know, grantors will tell you another. So it's all interpretive.
Any other questions from our audience?
Tim, I was just going to add, you know, through this conversation, I really loved hearing the silver lining that everybody was talking about with COVID. I am a little worried about kids. I'm a little worried about the increased anxiety and stress and depression. When they came back to the clubs after we were closed, that social isolation was real, and trying to teach kids how to reintegrate. I know when we had one of our planning calls, we're all a little worried about what that's going to look like in 2 and 3 years down the road. You know, I know we don't know yet what all of those pieces are going to be, but I'm so encouraged by the number of people that signed on to this call, by all the work that's being done across the community. I think that there's so much opportunity. So if we really join together and we think about our kids and we don't let them become lost. I felt like early in coronavirus, nobody was talking about the kids. Nobody was talking about when they were going to go back to school or what it was going to look like. I feel like that's shifting, that we're sending our kids back to school, that we're giving them opportunities, opening things up. So thankful for this opportunity and for everybody to really be thinking about our kids, because it's going to matter who they show up at and who's going to be our future leaders. You know, it matters.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good point, Dana. In my previous world, working in land conservation and getting kids outdoors, the big concern was screen time. And the statistics that were used to demonstrate the need were like, 4 hours a day on screens. Well, that number is through the roof at this point. So reintegrating kids into a healthy lifestyle is a real challenge going forward. Gretchen, you wanted to comment on?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in addition to the last year of, chaotic isolation, and increased technology and increased substance use, these guys are aware of what's going on politically in our country, and the division that has been happening in our country, the racial division, the political division. And they're also very aware of the issues presented with climate change. And there's a serious sense of helplessness and hopelessness in our young people. And the sooner we can, come to the rescue or give them opportunities for pro-social involvement and all those things that we've been talking about, the better, because 1 year in a 15-year-old's life is a long, long time.
Long time.
All
Yeah.
of us, I'm assuming all of us are a little bit older. We know things are going to ebb and flow, and we know things are going to be okay eventually, but they don't. So let's give them a break and help them out.
Yeah.
Tim, John, we had a hand raised, I think John Vickery. So John, if you want to just unmute yourself, you can ask a question.
Oh, John, you're muted.
There he is. Can you unmute him for him, Tracy?
I can ask him to unmute. There we go.
Now, can you hear me?
You can.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to comment. You ladies and your staffs are so important because you are adults that give a positive model to the kids you're working with. And that's how it doesn't always happen. You and school teachers are probably the majority of the kids' only contacts with adults outside of their family.
Yeah.
So thank you. In my careers, I worked in high school as a teacher, inner city, saw the principal get stabbed. I also worked in high school at a neighborhood that was fairly affluent families, and kids are all alike in some ways. Doesn't matter what the economy is, but they also have the same problems. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing more. I know I've worked with Gretchen when I was doing CASA work. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, John. Thank you for your comment. And you know what? Let's end on that note. With you, I think it's such a great observation. You guys are terrific role models, both for the youth you serve, but also for this community as a whole. And thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this panel. We're on a part of my job as facilitator is watching the clock, so I'm going to close the conversation. Helen, you're going to introduce someone who's going to talk about one of these exciting opportunities that's happening in the community. Are you ready to do that?
Yeah. I'm going to turn the floor over to Jen Dupuy. She is with the Steamboat Sports Barn. It's a new venture that's going on. She'll talk more about that. And I know Jen Dupuy from serving on the Steamboat Soccer Board, as she has been with the organization for many years. Jen, you're welcome to start, and Tracy will start your presentation.
Thanks, Helen. As she mentioned, my name's Jan Dupuy, and I'm on the board of the newly formed nonprofit, the Steamboat Sports Barn. I'm also the director of administration at the Steamboat Soccer Club. Anyone who's lived in Steamboat for a while knows that there's a need for an indoor athletic space in our community. We all agree that health benefits for youth participating in athletics are numerous, including that kids are 90% less likely to be obese. They're less likely to smoke and use drugs. They're 15% more likely to attend college. They have reduced risks for long-term health complications. Youth benefit from participating in athletics, whether in formal or informal settings. Our community is missing an indoor space. So we are excited to share with you a project that we are working on that will provide another tool to help our children succeed. Several years ago, we formed a committee of representatives from youth sports organizations to look at building a year-round indoor sports facility in the Yampa Valley. Having lived in Steamboat for many years and raising our families here, we knew the need for an indoor sports facility. The Steamboat Sports Barn was brought together out of an overwhelming need in our community for our youth sports organizations to be able to have an indoor facility for practice and competition. As most of you know, our existing facilities are strained beyond capacity. In fact, right now our soccer teams are currently practicing in a parking lot because that's the only space that's available. Both high altitude basketball and whiteout volleyball had to shut down for the past year because they have no place to practice. They are reliant on the school gyms for their practice space. The goal of the Steamboat Sports Barn is to privately finance, design, construct, and operate this year-round indoor sports complex here in the Yampa Valley. We believe that there are many more children we can serve if we have the space to do so. As our community continues to grow, the demand on our existing school facilities and fields has reached its capacity, especially for indoor facilities. With our outdoor fields covered in snow 6 months out of the year, there is a need and a demand in the youth sports community for indoor year-round programming. As we mentioned here today, we anticipate a number of other non-sport community youth groups would benefit from an indoor facility such as this. After doing extensive research on other indoor facilities around the country, we settled on a preliminary design that would include an indoor turf field for sports such as soccer and lacrosse, and court space suitable for volleyball and basketball. We're proposing a $7 million, 45,000 square foot indoor year-round sports complex. We'll have a conference room available for kids to use for homework before or after practice. And it can also be a space that can be used by other groups for training and meetings. Our research indicates that we would be able to immediately serve 1,500 youth in our community via programming offered by soccer, lacrosse, volleyball, and basketball. When we incorporate other potential youth user groups, the number of children who would benefit from a facility like this goes up significantly. We want to offer programs such as drop-in basketball, soccer, kickball, and dodgeball on Friday and Saturday nights as a place where kids can engage in healthy, fun activities. We feel that the Steamboat Sports Barn could become the go-to place for the youth in our community. In addition, adult recreational programming needs space for participation. We envision the sports barn to be a true community asset and benefit. Our plan is to privately fund the design, construction, operation, and maintenance of the Steamboat Sports Barn via a capital campaign. Upon completion of a successful capital campaign, we anticipate breaking ground in the spring of 2023 with completion in the fall of that year. Currently, we are researching various locations and plan to identify our top location by spring of this year. Ideally, we would like to be centrally located with a reasonable distance to schools and the core trail, removing some of the barriers created by a lack of transportation. We appreciate your time today to hear about how we can all work together to help the youth of our community. If you have any questions, please reach out to any of the board members of the Steamboat Sports Barn. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jan. That's great. That was a perfect summary of your work. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank Jan and Gretchen, Dana, Amber, and Michelle for being on our panel. We can let you guys go now, and we're just going to do a quick debrief of what you all think about the top. What were your takeaways from this presentation? Did you find this to be a helpful conversation? What were you surprised to learn? We have just a couple minutes to take some comments. We can do this. Let's do this in person. You can press the reaction button down at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, and Tracy can unmute you, and we can take your comments that way. Anybody has any comments? I see Shine is raising her hand.
Oh, and
Actually, Shine, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, I have more of a comment than a question. You know, I've been involved with a lot of the non-for-profits in this town, and I felt I knew these organizations pretty well anyway, but I learned so much more with this presentation that they gave, and they were well run, and they all were very on target with what they do as an organization. I'm so glad that so many people were able to view this, but how can we get this out to more other people?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. We have it recorded, of course, so we can make the recording available, but thanks for your comment, Shine. Appreciate that. Any other comments or unanswered questions that linger for you? Paula.
This was fabulous. Like Shine, I feel like I know what all these organizations do. I'm familiar with them, but this was such an in-depth cover of what's happening right now. And so I do appreciate being brought up to date on that. I had a question because several of you talked about youth wanting to be engaged in civic discourse and want their voices to be heard. And I'm wondering, how do you all perceive mentoring them so that they feel like their voices are heard and that we as members of the public help them and make sure that we are listening and that others are listening to what they have to say? Because often I found that the adults in our community who run various things from governmental to nonprofit to athletics say one thing about youth, but then when the kids come together and do a presentation, it's like, well, thank you so much, but it never goes anywhere. And so that sort of defeats them. And I want to know what your suggestions are so that we as community members can support that.
That's a great question, Paula. It's a big question. I think
Dana, Gretchen,
can answer that.
anybody?
Well, we've excused them. I think they've dropped off the call.
Well,
No,
I'm
right?
still here, and I just want to put a shout out to what
Gretchen,
Amber's doing with Grand Futures. And the Grand Futures is taking on this really cool youth model where it's called Youth to Youth, and through the Youth Council, they're empowering youth to find issues and be solutions to those issues in our community. And I know it's a small start, but I think it's a good start, and it's a evidence-based program. And I feel like all of us youth serving organizations are finally at a point where, we're ready to put our kids out front and get their advice and have them be our voice more. I don't have a solid answer for you, Paula, but I really appreciate it. And, just know that, like I know Grand Futures in particular is doing a lot to move that needle forward. Amber, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Gretchen. And we know that it's possible. In the past, Teen Council, they adopted the bag ban, which we as Grand Futures won't take credit for. That was a partnership with Teen Council in the city. But our model, the Dover Youth to Youth, our Teen Council has met with all of the community leaders, with reps, with advocates. They're learning about the issues from the experts. And then now tonight they're doing a professional development session with the Munteen Leadership Group to identify their strengths and how they can show up in a public space and within their group, and how they can be most effective with their own skill set at driving some of these issues forward that they feel passionate about. And then from there, we provide opportunities for them to actually use their skills and knowledge to create a bag ban or to create a mental health support network in the community. And so with that, opportunities to practice, that's where the community comes in. That's where we all go in front of City Council with our youth and we show them support, because the youth to youth model, it generates more youth voices who are able to confidently and informed speak on topics that they're passionate about. So I mean, we're happy to provide information and updates on what the youth are working on so that community members know how exactly to get involved, because we're training them to do that advocacy.
That's very helpful. Judy and Rich, you have your hand up. This will probably be our only last question, probably. So,
Going on about, it sounds like there's so many opportunities available in the area. And I'm wondering, how do young adults and parents, youths, how do they learn about all of these opportunities? Is there ever anything in the community like a job fair model to let people learn a lot about different opportunities in one place?
Amber's nodding her head. You want to answer that, Amber?
Yes, through our work, we do the CTC, which is a prevention coalition, and we work in tandem with Routt County Youth Services Coalition. And the Youth Services Coalition does a job fair for young people, so all opportunities for them, and that includes paid internships and Rocky Mountain Youth Corps positions, and any way that a young person could get plugged into a paid position. And there's also some upcoming resources that community members have created to pull together. I think there's some websites that have like all of the youth opportunities in one place to make it easier for parents to navigate and to get plugged into those opportunities. Parents and family members.
It's really important that we all refer to each other. So that's a lot of how parents know, because teachers know about us, counselors know about us, we know about each other. So we'll actually help the parents, you know, get the form, get the scholarship, get the cleats.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, you guys. And let's now, we need to kind of wrap this up. So Tracy, I'm going to pass this to you now to kind of talk a little bit about what we're trying to do here at the foundation.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Well, I want to thank the 4 panelists and Jan from the Steamboat Sports Barn and everyone who joined us today. Hopefully you've gained some new insight. I know that I have. It sounds like you have. And so where do you take it from here? I mean, we heard the panelists talk about volunteer opportunities, being present, plugging in, engaging with local youth. But if you're compelled by the discussion today, what are some steps that you can take toward actually making an impact in our community? And I always say that everybody has something to give: time, treasure, talent. Everyone's got something to offer. And so whatever that means for you, that is why the Yampa Valley Community Foundation is here, is to help you identify the ways that you can make an impact that are going to be meaningful for you, that fit into your model of philanthropy and giving. Philanthropy and charitable giving are so personal, and they're unique to each person. And so there's no cookie cutter answer to this question. What resonated with you is different than what resonated with the person on the screenshot next to you. Hopefully next time it'll be the person sitting next to you. But that's why we're here. So we hold donor advised funds. We work with donors directly through those funds, as well as many other vehicles in their charitable giving. But no matter what you use in your charitable giving, whether that's your time, your treasure, or your talent, we're a resource to help you plug in and find meaningful ways to give that will inspire you and make an impact. One of our core goals at the Yampa Valley Community Foundation is to provide service to donors who want to create positive change and make an impact in the Valley. We're passionate about building a thriving community through the power of philanthropy and connecting people who care with causes that matter. Those aren't just mottos or slogans for us. That is our passion and what we do every day, and we love to talk about it. We'd love to be a resource for you. We'll follow up with you after today's session with an email with the list of those youth serving organizations. But we'd love to have a one-on-one conversation with you about the causes that are most important to you and what you're passionate about, so we can help you identify those opportunities and get you plugged in. This is what it's all about right here. This is where the rubber meets the road. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or anyone else at YVCF. We would absolutely love to hear from you.
Okay, Helen, you want to talk about the community grants?
Absolutely. One way that you can get involved with philanthropy in our community is through our community grants round. Our community grants round opens for applications in late spring, and it's the foundation's effort to provide funding for a healthy and vibrant Yampa Valley by supporting nonprofits who are addressing shared community goals, like what we heard today in youth success. A dedicated and informed committee of local members And YVCF board members spend over 40 hours each reviewing nonprofit applications to ensure organizations' financial stability and overall impact of the nonprofit's work within their mission. Through this comprehensive process, the committee makes thoughtful granting decisions, resulting in effective impact towards the collective needs and a deeper understanding of community needs. Our 2020 grant round was really exciting. The foundation awarded $281,000 to 61 organizations across the Yampa Valley. This was an increase of almost $80,000 from 2019. And we fund all sectors from arts and culture to recreation to youth serving organizations to health and human services. And we are excited to kick off this grant round this summer.
Yeah, and this is a really great way for you to support the community. We would encourage you to think about, when you are thinking about your philanthropy this year, think about making a gift to the community grants round. There are a number of different ways to do that. You can give to the process overall, and kind of trust the committee that's putting all this effort into reviewing proposals to make the right decisions around where the most impact will happen with these grants. You can also choose a sector that you're most interested in. Say it's arts and culture, and you can make a gift to the arts and culture community grants. So that helps support those nonprofits from that sector that have applied through our community grants round. And of course, we also encourage you to give directly to the nonprofits that you care the most about, and you can do that through our community grants round. But the more money we can leverage through donors like all of you, the more impact we'll have in the Valley. It's a great opportunity for us to get money out the door and serve the nonprofits who are serving us. So I think that's it. We're going to, as Tracy mentioned, there'll be a follow-up email to all of you with some more information, but also a survey. We really want to hear your thoughts on this program. We're right now planning our next programs, and we'd love to take the feedback we get from this one and be able to apply it to our next topic. So with that, it's 1:33. We're a little bit over time, but thank you so much for joining and for hanging in there. We really appreciate all of you taking an interest in this. And again, thank you to our panelists who made this a wonderful presentation. It was great. Thanks, you guys. Bye.